The Last Jedi is one of the most controversial movies in the Star Wars franchise, and for good reason.
This is the story about how we were deceived by The Last Jedi.
Our story begins with The Force Awakens. Our first reaction to The Force Awakens was not as bad as the prequels, but not as good as the OT, so overall not bad.
We happily ignored the movie for a long time, playing LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga on the Wii, and enjoying Age of Ultron. That's a story for another day.
But then, we watched Pawn Story Games' video about how Star Wars The Force Awakens is the worst movie ever made.
And it turns out, yeah, pretty bad. We realized that we were distracted by the nostalgia, and we just wanted a little bit of hit of Star Wars content. It had been many years after all.
So then we just stewed in our own tomatoes and waited for the sequel. We had no thoughts about the Rogue One.
I didn't like it.
I didn't like it that much either, but you disliked it more than me, and now I'm with you there. Another story.
So then when The Last Jedi trailer dropped, we weren't really looking for much, but it did invoke some interest.
We wanted some things. We wanted like Kylo to man up and actually do something with his life. We wanted Luke to return. We wanted some kind of character development. And then The Last Jedi released. And we saw it.
And overall, we thought it was pretty good.
It ended up having some of the stuff that we wanted. Kylo killed Snoke, which is how we wanted things to go.
And there was a not super great fight scene, but there was a fight scene, so that was pretty good. You know, looking back on it, those were pretty shallow reasons for enjoying a movie. But then when we got home, we looked at Rotten Tomatoes, which is, of course, a great site for reviews, obviously. I wonder why there's so many negative reviews.
We saw the difference between the audience and the critic scores, but that was back before the Great Purge, before the dark times. But then we went to the best source of objective film critique, YouTube!
There was all kinds of opinions, some of them good, some of them bad, some of them base, some of them bland. But then we started to think, maybe the movie's not so great.
Actually, there were some pretty big mistakes.
In fact, maybe a lot of the movie was garbage.
Actually, it's just bad.
And that's how we got red-pilled.
Afterward, you could even say black-pilled.
Well, then the story sucked, and a lot of stories actually sucked, because afterwards we changed how we look at a lot of other movies. Why we didn't like some movies, and why we actually did like other movies.
Found that a lot of the ones we liked, in fact, just had superficial reasons, sort of like The Last Jedi, some stylistic flashy stuff. We realized that the flashy visuals are actually oftentimes just a disguise, a cloak to hide a terrible story.
And that the fan service was a thinly veiled attack on Star Wars and movies as a whole, and that Lucasfilm produces nothing but trash now.
That opinion poisoned every other Star Wars experience I've had from anything they've released.
Solo, terrible. Rise of Skywalker, terrible. Mandalorian, controversial, strangely enough. I don't like it personally, but people thought it was better than Rise of Skywalker, so there's that, I guess.
Obi-Wan, Andor, all of it. I was no longer impressed. And now, we make videos on YouTube.
And it did actually accomplish some good things. Like now we appreciate good movies, and we realize that they're actually really good, like the original trilogy.
So in the end, I guess you could say our opinion on movies and how cultured we are now was accomplished by The Last Jedi. Thank you, Rian Johnson.
You absolute.
Anyways, the end, I guess.
A very heartfelt, testimony, but what does this have to do with your parking ticket?
This concludes Mio-Kido Court. Mio and Kido were found guilty of illegal parking inside the wall of an AMC theater and were sentenced to 32 days of public service, and which included making a video about the Book of Boba Fett and how it could have been good, which included watching some of the Book of Boba Fett, which is more than enough punishment. We'll see you next time.